Good afternoon. My name is Joey Fox. I am the website and registration manager for the conference. It is my privilege to introduce the final panel of the day. Media has quickly progressed from print to digital over the past decade. Print newspapers have seen a dramatic decline in usage in favor of up-to-the-minute online news outlets. How has this impacted sports, specifically its leagues and conferences, and where is it leading the industry? Here to discuss this issue are 5 experts in the sports media industry. Panel moderator Darren Rovell is an ESPN sports business reporter currently working in the fields of television, digital media, and radio. He writes for ESPN.com and reports for SportsCenter and Outside the Lines. Mr. Rovell was also named the #1 Twitter account every sports fan should follow in 2011 by Athlon Sports, and as of 3 p.m. today, had 272,143 followers. And you can look that up. He also wanted me to point out that he finished 5th in the world in the watermelon seed spitting competition. David Berson is the Executive Vice President of CBS Sports. Previously, Mr. Berson worked at ESPN for 16 years, where he was responsible for overseeing programming across all ESPN networks. In January 2006, the Sporting News listed Mr. Berson on its annual list of the young and powerful. In 2007 through 2009, he was selected as a Sports Business Journal 40 Under 40 recipient and named as a 40 Under 40 Hall of Famer. Scott Burton is the executive editor of ESPN, the magazine. Mr. Burton's responsibilities are wide-ranging, from directing writers and editors to creating issue story lineups. Mr. Burton was also the editor of the best-selling ESPN Fantasy Football Preview magazine from 2006 to 2011. Stephen Master is the Senior Vice President and Head of Sports Practice at the Neilsen Company. As the head of the Neilsen Sports Group, Mr. Master developed the Fanalytics platform, which provides brands and properties with a deeper understanding of how fans consume sports content. Prior to joining Neilsen, Mr. Master was the Vice President of Business Development of Corporate Sponsorships for the NFL. Finally, Elizabeth Parkinson is the Senior Vice President of Marketing and Partnerships for the Detroit Lions. Ms. Parkinson provides leadership in the areas of digital media, marketing and promotions, corporate partnerships, and community relations. She also has responsibility for the Detroit Lions brand and the fan experience. Please welcome our Media and Reshaping the World of Sports panel speakers. Thank you.
Thank you. It's great to be here. I have a bit of very important housekeeping. Media and Reshaping the World of Sports is in association with Palace Sports and Entertainment. Under new ownership and a new leadership team who is rebranding the organization, Palace Sports and Entertainment is undertaking a new mission to come together and thrill their fans. PS&E has invested heavily in their infrastructure, including the modernization of media and digital platforms to adapt and grow its social engagement, launching tools such as Pistons mobile app, Pistons Fast Break, an interactive game program, and installing new Twitter boards to enhance the in-arena experience. The company is rapidly growing its social fan base. Visit Pistons.com and the Palace Sports and Entertainment booth to hear more about the company's initiatives. Okay. So I think we're in the golden age of sports media, of sports television. My wife fills up the DVR with all the shows that she watches, and I don't know the last time she's watched one ad. Meanwhile, I don't use the DVR at all because I have to watch games live and tweet about them and make sure that I know what's going on. One more thing before I get to this. I do want you guys to raise your hand throughout this discussion because I want to make sure that you leave here with all your questions answered. You can tweet at me at Darren Rovell. I'll see it here, or raise your hand. Okay, so as I was saying, and I'm going to start with Stephen here, tell us, since you are part of Neilsen, which, among other things, monitors ratings, tell us about what we're seeing now in sports TV live and why it is that way versus other forms of programming.
Well, first off, I just want to say it's great to be back. I was in the business school 20 years ago with Jeff Blau as my classmate and as a fraternity member, and I'm in his auditorium. And afterwards, I'm going to take you to the library and I'll show you the book that I donated. I can't believe.
Move the mic over.
So perhaps you should go into real estate and not sports marketing. My one words of wisdom. So getting to Darren's question about sports media and consumption, it's amazing when you think about what's going on in the media fragmentation, 500 cable channels, YouTube, social media, Facebook, Twitter. There's all these different ways for people to consume content, and it's certainly hurt most broadcasters in terms of genres of programming. The primetime shows that used to be in the 90s, like a Seinfeld or a Friends, now they're not getting close to those numbers on most broadcast networks. However, the one genre of programming that continues to keep building audience consistently is sports. And it's done it time and time again. Everyone said with the Olympics is the perfect example. NBC took so much abuse for putting the thing on tape delay and all this other stuff. They said it was awful, terrible, terrible. You know, they got to show it live. They got to show it live. They streamed 5,000 hours of live stuff online. Yet the ratings in prime time continue to grow, and they grow big over Beijing. And in fact, I think the exact number was about 175 million Americans consumed some Olympics in prime time, which is an astounding number. It made it the most viewed event in television history in the U.S. So if good content is there, particularly sports content, people are watching.
David, can we talk a little bit about rights fees in terms, because what we see is we see CBS, SEC, billion-dollar fees. The NFL is going to go from $1.9 billion a year to $3 billion a year starting in 2014. How is, and I don't think a lot of people know this because they just see these ridiculous numbers, how are rights fees figured out at this level?
I just want to mention two things first. Thank you for putting on this conference, all the students that did this. It is fantastic to have another excuse to come back to Ann Arbor. I love it here, and it's great to be back. And the second thing is Darren Rovell went to journalism school at Northwestern, who we're playing this weekend. So not only is he a competitor in that regard, he actually is wearing a purple tie because of it. So I just want to point that out here.
Purple shirt and purple something else, too.
One other point about Darren. Darren had a TV show. He has 272,000 Twitter followers, as we mentioned, as of this morning. Only 32,000 people watch the television show, though.
So we're gonna get into that. We're gonna get into that. We're gonna get into that because I think that's important to talk about.
Okay. So Darren referenced rights fees, and it's a topic that is often talked about. Actually, today in the news, there's a lot of talk. Darren just showed it to me actually while we were sitting here waiting, of rumors of ESPN now paying upwards of $500 million for the remaining games in the BCS per year for the next 12 years to come. So rights fees are escalating at an unbelievable rate. For years and years, people would say it can't keep going up, it can't keep going up, it can't keep going up, and it has. And it has largely due to the increased value of live programming, which Stephen and Darren just talked about. It's also because there's a lot more competition. Back in the day, you had ABC, CBS, and NBC showing sports. You added Fox to that, ESPN and all its networks. Now NBC Sports Network, CBS Sports Network, Fox is rumored to launch one. You go down the dial, you have hundreds of networks and many, many, many sports networks. So there's tons and tons of competition. It's also that these rights you're acquiring now are not simply on television. The rights people are acquiring at networks such as CBS and ESPN, wherever it might be, you're buying rights for regardless of what platform those rights are going to live on television, on mobile, online, you name it. And you need all those platforms to help monetize all these, but it's also important because that's how you're consuming things. So when we're buying rights, we need to make sure we're offering those rights to all the platforms you're consuming them.
I butt in for a second. So when a rights fee is done and you know what check you're going to cut, how confident are you that you're making your money back, or anyone in this business at this time?
Well, I'll speak on behalf of CBS that we only do rights deals that actually make money. That's our edict. I can't speak for others. We're very fiscally responsible in this regard. Everybody has different models and will value and judge success differently. The one of the reasons rights fees have escalated so drastically is that back in the day, the only form of money that you'd be getting back is the advertising that you sold during these telecasts. The revenue streams are far different now, and the largest, and particularly in the cable model, is actually the subscriber fees that the networks get from the cable systems or satellite providers. So when you pay your cable bill, part of that, in essence, is flowing all the way through to pay for these rights. And many cable networks, most sports networks, make far more money that way than they do from advertising sales.
Okay, we got to move on because I want to go quick, and I am getting your tweets in here. I asked on Twitter, this is for you, Scott, when is the last time you read a full article in a sports magazine? And I gave this month, last 3 months, last 6 months, more than a year. 57.1% said this month. That was the leading vote. Okay.
Hallelujah.
28.2% was second at more than a year. And then between last 3 months, last 6 months was about 15%. In this environment, how are you focused on making sure that a magazine that comes out every 2 weeks is relevant?
I mean, look, everyone in print is
Microphone.
Here we go. Everyone in print is doing a lot of hand wringing. Newsweek is about to fold their print edition at the end of the year, and everyone's asking themselves, is print dead? And my answer is always, it's not a bad time to be in print. It's a bad time to be a bad magazine. Newsweek was a bad magazine. ESPN, we try to think creatively. I'm sorry to be that harsh, but it's like we have to face realities about what magazines do. And when you make your readers choose between platforms, that's your death knell. What ESPN the magazine is trying to do is trying to embrace the future, which is you break down the walls between platforms. The magazine is incredibly important to the product that we put out, but it's the starting point to the content that we create. And any content we create has to be able to be scalable. We have to be able to drive content on TV, on the web, on podcasts, on radio. A magazine is able to function that way and create content that can be scalable up on those platforms is going to survive and thrive. We actually are doing, this is the most exciting creative time for the magazine. Our solution to this is you really embrace the medium of what magazines can do that no other platform can do. And that is really big photography, really strong investigative journalism, really great storytelling, and then what we do is we have a special theme for each issue. Every issue is dedicated to a theme. So it's the body issue, it's the speed issue. Our next issue, which we might get into, I don't want to drag this out, is One Day, One Game. And it really becomes an immersive experience for the reader. With all the noise that's out there on the various platforms, the talk shows, and SportsCenter and the highlights, we're kind of a respite from that noise. We want you to kind of immerse yourself in the experience of reading our magazine. It's the difference between having a remote control in your hand and watching TV and going to a movie. We want to be the movie. We want to have you for 2 hours, lights out, you're not going anywhere, your mobile phone is off, you pick up the magazine, you start from beginning to end. And that's kind of our strategy.
Elizabeth, we've seen I believe it started with the Bengals maybe 6 or 7 years ago when they hired Jeff Hobson, I think, from the Cincinnati Enquirer. But we've seen teams kind of start to have legitimate media, people who have been in the newspaper industry or elsewhere, cover the teams themselves because the team wants to be seen as legitimate media on their website. Tell us what the Lions have done as far as having a writer that independently covers the team and whether there have been fruits of that in terms of people coming to your website.
Sure. Thanks, Darren. We're not the first to do this, but we feel like trailblazers. So the Lions, like a lot of sports enterprises, had a website that was more or less a PR vehicle for just pumping out sort of basic information about our players, our events, and our team. What we are aspiring to be and the direction we're moving in is really the single destination for our fans. We know there's other media outlets out there. We know there's other places they can get their news, but we want to drive them to our news sources, our apps, our website, and the only way to do that is to give them authentic, real content. And so, as Darren mentioned, this last year we hired 2 writers. One is very well known in this market, Mike O'Hara. He wrote for the Free Press for years and years, actually covered the Lions and Sports Beat. We hired Mike on our team, as well as a younger writer, Tim Twentyman, who is more fluent in blogging and social media. So what the change in the media landscape has enabled teams like the Lions to do is more or less become our own media center. Mike is one of our best followed content on our website. And what Darren is also alluding to is that didn't come without friction. As you can imagine, there's players, there's coaches that objected to go into our website and seeing that there was content on our site that didn't necessarily praise them or praise the performance of the team or decisions they were making on the field. Our writers know that there's a line they can't cross. It can't become personal. They can't question our ownership. But at the end of the day, they have to write in an authentic way, and they are. And what we're finding is that it's our website traffic has blossomed, and more importantly, our engagement from our fans has blossomed as a result of taking that risk.
Sorry to interrupt. Who vets the stories? Does the team get to vet the stories before they go up?
No, they're posted, yeah. I mean, we have basic parameters, and again, they're simply, it can't be personal, and you can't attack the ownership, which shouldn't really have anything to do for the most of the time with the performance on the field. But no, they post it, and I have to say, knock on aluminum or what we have here, that it hasn't become an issue other than there's been some feelings that have been hurt. And our ownership has decided that this is the direction we're going in, and they've defended our decision to put that content up.
I got a quick question. And most of the people in this room are under 22, although I feel like I'm at the 7th inning of a Dodgers game. Everyone left. But most people are under 22. How many of you folks in the audience actually read a physical newspaper anymore like this? Like, other than the Michigan Daily, because that doesn't really count.
Well, it's actually the only daily in Ann Arbor, so it should count.
So there's still a good number.
Scott, I want to talk a little bit about sports writers or journalists as brand. We have a question from Ben hold on one second. I think I lost it just now. I guess the question is, hold on. Okay, here we go. Ian Burley. For Scott, most attractive writers, sports guys who learn to write, writers who learn sports, combo of the two. What do you have to be at ESPN the magazine? Are you going to devote more pages to Bill Simmons or Wayne Drees?
Yeah. It's not an either or. Again, I think creating either or false dichotomies between the two is not really a successful formula. I mean, to me, it's a very interesting time to think about what kind of content resonates from your reader. When you have sites like SB Nation, when you have sites like Bleacher Report that have all this user-generated content. And to me, it's like there are two really strategies that a print company like ourselves can do to kind of differentiate yourself from kind of these, it's a very easy barrier to entry for someone to just post a story on these sites. And so our solution is twofold, right? Long-form journalism is something that, someone who's an amateur can't really do. No one can really do what Wright Thompson does if you're not really good at your job. And two, it's journalism as brand. What you mentioned is, journalists really have to embrace every platform. They have to embrace every medium. They have to be as comfortable doing podcasts as they are doing stand-ups on TV, as they are writing, a 3,000-word story. You cannot choose your medium. You can't be a one-trick pony. You have to be able to do everything. And the writers who can do that are going to be the ones who are most successful, particularly at a company like ESPN that has every platform.
We got a question over there.
Yeah, I have a follow-up question for Elizabeth. You talked about wanting your website to be like the #1 destination for your fans. A couple things. NFL.com has links at the top of their page where they can go to every team's website. And if you go to the different teams' website, they're formatted almost identically. What's the relationship between DetroitLions.com and the NFL? You bring traffic to that, to your website. Does that help the NFL.com or the NFL?
So within the last couple of years, the NFL actually launched that platform. And so all 32 teams use the exact same type of operating platform for the website. So we all use the same templates, and you can customize it to some version. The NFL also has certain banner placement that they retain for their national partners. So if you go to DetroitLions.com, if you go to Green Bay Packers.com, the top banner and the side banner are going to be rotating ads that the NFL place. So in terms of site traffic, obviously there's going to be some that come from, I don't know the number, that comes from NFL.com down to the Lions. And again, I'm sure it goes the other way. In terms of aggregate, I don't know who's really tracking the aggregate. The NFL may care about that. We're really just more concerned about our own traffic volume and what we control on our site. So you absolutely notice that, yes, it's all running off the same, type of template and operating platform.
I want to get to this question and not make sure it's last, since we've had multiple people ask this, and that is career advice. So I think that's relatively important here. So let's just start with Scott and go all the way down.
Yeah. I mean, if you're actually interested in being a journalist, do not go to grad school. You're wasting your time. Like anything else, it's experience.
That's like $120,000 savings right there.
Yeah.
It's better than Geico.
I mean, come on, Bill Simmons, right? Part of it is you just write. I mean, Bill Simmons that's how he started. He just started writing, started posting, he created his own audience, and it took off from there. So really, it's about finding any way, any excuse, any opportunity, any platform to write and to create. And you will find an audience, you create an audience, you get noticed, you move up from there.
I always used to believe and tell people that the most important thing is working in a field that you love and you have such passion about. And earlier today, Bob Bowman talked about that, and Rowan talked about that. And I still believe that a lot, but I'll echo something that Bob Bowman said, which I've thought of even more recently, that the people you work with and for is really the driving force behind the learning you'll have, the enjoyment you'll have, the success you'll have. And even if you're in a job that you find that would typically be somewhat miserable, if you're with people you really like and that you're learning from, it can be an incredibly rewarding experience. So when you are pursuing opportunities, just as Bob said earlier, make sure you understand who you're going to work for. It'll really change your day-to-day life.
I think Tarico mentioned this before. It's also about relationships, and I can't stress that enough, because when we were just putting together this conference, I was working with the student group. And I said, you know what? We've got to put together a small team of Michigan alums, and we know people in the industry, and we'll make this thing great. And that's just a small example. But you build relationships, and along the way, you start your career at 22, 23, 24, and so on and so forth. You move forth, you change jobs. If you're in the sports business, you'll change jobs a few times. But once you're in, and you just got to make sure you don't burn any bridges, and you continue to build great relationships. Because at the end of the day, your integrity and people trusting you and people liking you is all you've got. And even if you do a great job, but you're an asshole, no one's going to want to work with you. So you really got to be a good person, and it can't just be smart. You got to be a good person and also build great relationships and trust.
For your Twitter quote, do you want me to say asshole or a money sign, money sign? Elizabeth?
28,000 viewers.
It was 34,000 when you started. How did it go down?
It's Neilsen. It's Neilsen. They keep on adjusting. So my first comments are going to be directed at all the women in the room. So this is going to start out being very sexist, and then I think it will resonate with everyone. So as you all noticed, out of everyone that was on the panel today, there were only 2 of us women out of maybe, 20 panelists. So I'm delighted to see how many women are in the audience, because I think what we're seeing is a real opportunity here. There's a huge change in audience. The NFL is targeting ethnic markets. They're targeting women. I mean, we've had a 40% growth in affinity towards women over the last 5 years that the NFL is tracking. So you're in the right place at the right time, and that's exciting. My number one piece of advice to the women in the room, and I'll do a shout out to my husband, who is a U of M law grad, Frank. Marry well. Marry someone who who will support you. So I have four children. I've worked my entire career. There's a lot of travel with this job. There's a lot of demands, and I married very well. I married somebody who was very supportive and who was with me 100%. So I don't say that lightly. That's huge. Otherwise, your life can be absolutely miserable. In general, for everybody in the room, don't be afraid, I'll use an Aussie term, to be a tall poppy. Don't be afraid to stand out. People may try to cut you down, but stand out, ask questions, be seen, be heard. And I agree with everyone at the table. The number one thing you can do is pick your boss well. And I've had the benefit of working with some amazing people that I would work for again and again. And that's, I can't state that enough. Last but not least, I'm probably the newest person in the whole group today to sports. I joined the Lions on July 23rd. I walked in the door the same day as all the rookies. But what I brought to the Lions is what they needed. I brought 30 years of advertising, marketing, PR experience that nobody there had. So my other piece of advice is you can go the sports track and it's going to serve you, but don't be afraid to go with an agency. Go with like Ira is with sports marketing or management. Do some other things, because what I'm seeing in sports is they're actually looking outside of sports because they know what they know, and they know that there's others that know more. And so I challenge you to try some other things, even if sports is your passion.
My first rule is put everything in a box. Don't ever send anything in a folder. Just do priority mail, whatever it costs, flat rate, $4.90, because people like to get a box. It's exciting. No one in the history of man has ever opened a box, has ever gotten a box and thrown it in the garbage, which is a problem in our industry because there's too much of us.
You have to avoid the peanuts, though. Everyone hates
Right, yeah, the peanuts and the bubbles. So that's one, because getting attention in this industry starts at the moment you engage with someone. And if you don't get to them, an email is not as good as you think in terms of, I figured out it's a first initial, last name, at. So box is one. And then two is always realize every day how many people in this industry want to work for free, and understand that you have to work as hard as you can possibly work in order to get paid to work in sports. And I think about that every day, that someone is waiting to steal my job to do the job better than me. Okay, sorry, that was very intense. I'd like to thank Seth Koch at SKOCH10. He's a junior at Michigan, for following me. Okay, let's continue. Okay, David, I want to ask you this question. Super Bowl, for example. Okay, so it's reported that CBS is almost sold out of ads for the Super Bowl. Okay, does that suggest $4 million is too cheap? He's not going to answer this. Okay.
Yeah, I'm certainly not going to talk about the Super Bowl price, but it's going well. It's been reported, very steep prices, and it's the one time that the world is watching. Everyone is watching. It's the most valuable property, the most valuable few hours there possibly is in the United States, in the world. Each year, we're happy at CBS to be televising it this year.
Someone asked me, someone tweeted at me, how is a CBS Super Bowl different from an NBC Super Bowl or other channel?
The game's the game. Larry Jones there with Fox. He had it, every 3 years, NBC, CBS, and Fox share it. The game's the game. We each have our separate production techniques. I'll tell you one difference this year at CBS. CBS had the Super Bowl every 3 years, forever pretty much, except for a little period in the 90s. And it's always been about a 4-hour pregame show and the game, and a little postgame show before you get to an entertainment show. This year it's going to be a lot different. This year it's going to be a week-long programming initiative across the various CBS properties and CBS sports properties. And CBS as a whole, we're changing a lot of it as technology changes and viewers consume things across various different platforms. CBS for years and years has had the Masters and the NFL and the NCAA tournament and the SEC and U.S. Open tennis and on and on and on. And it's always been about weekend afternoon events. And it's changing. It's now where we have a 24-hour cable network. We have a very robust website. On January 2nd, we're launching a 24-hour radio network. And I say this just because that's, again, how people consume things. Things nowadays with hundreds and hundreds or thousands of options, it's really brands that resonate. And when you're looking where to go, what to do, it's a brand that's going to bring you in. And when people are consuming things across all these platforms, your brand needs to be there and needs to be there in a very credible way. You know, even touching on what Elizabeth said before, if you're covering a story, you know, it could be the Big Ten Network on Penn State. It could be 60 Minutes on NFL. It could be the NFL Network on the NFL lockout. If you're not credible, even on your own properties, you're going to lose people pretty quickly. And in this day and age where people have so many options, you really can't be. So it's really about brands that matter.
And going back to the Super Bowl for a minute about the $4 million for a spot, I don't believe it's a 30-second spot you're paying for anymore. Now with social media, brands who are smart are starting that.
You monetize the whole thing.
You're starting weeks in advance, and you're thinking about it. I don't know how many people saw the Bueller ad. I'm just from Chicago, so I'm a huge Bueller fan. But the Bueller ads last year were teased weeks before, and they had probably 10 million views before the Super Bowl spot even ran. And everybody is doing that now. So the list in Ad Ages and USA Today's and the Wall Street Journals and every magazine and every newspaper in this country prints the 50 Super Bowl advertisers and their spots that they're going to run weeks in advance. So there's so much opportunity for brands to engage with the folks who are advertising the Super Bowl long before that 30-second spot runs. And there are all kind of promotions that they could do to leverage that. Everyone's watching it.
Sorry. There's a story out today that Danica Patrick will, in fact, be in both GoDaddy spots in the Super Bowl.
She was always going to be in them. Come on.
That's news. Today. You know that. Yeah.
Good job, Ira.
Good job, Ira. Ira planted that one.
All roads lead to Ira. Just remember that.
Any questions in the audience? Just want to make sure you get up there. Yeah, you.
I have a question for Stephen and David. Do you see an impact in rating for particular announcers, either they affect positively or negatively? Do you do studies of
It's tough to quantify through ratings how the announcers do. I mean, you could see an aggregate, certain telecasts. We do tons of research about how different announcers resonate. But you can't, it's not as though you're going to put both games up, put them in a vacuum and judge them and see. But you get tons of feedback every day, now especially through social media. But we do a lot of research, and a lot of it is innate. That's one of the things about sports and about production, actually production, anything. A lot of it's gut. It really is, and you have to trust your instincts a lot.
From my perspective, it's really teams. Teams or players drive ratings more so than announcers. So you could have the best announcing pair versus the announcing pair that people don't like as much. But if there's a better game and better teams on that one network, they're probably going to fare better. The one way you can measure announcers is if they have their own show. Like if you look at the PTI guys, obviously you can measure, are they doing well? So, of course, I'm going back to Darren. Because all roads And then when Darren had a show, he did great on Twitter. But, again, he's a cat, so we get to take every chance we can.
I'll start asking real tough questions. Okay, up there in the back.
There have been a lot of experiments through the years where people have tried lots of stuff through interactive TV and online, and everyone always thinks it's really cool. I want to choose my own camera angle. And then when you do it for 5 seconds or 5 minutes, you realize, I'm not good at this. There are actually professionals that do this for me, that choose, and I get to just kick back and watch, and it's much more enjoyable. So it sounds cool, but in practice, it hasn't really played out that way. But as technology has improved and the internet is far more usable with a two-screen experience, there are some times where that comes into play. Last year's Super Bowl, NBC streamed it, and there were various camera angles. You could do that. I think you'll see more of that at times. But it's not widespread, nor has it been all that successful when it has been used. My comment was more about just different camera angles. As for celebrity-based stuff, there's tons and tons and tons of research that sports fans come to sports for sports. And, there have been many experiments where different announce teams or different networks have tried a lot of stuff, and they come back to just doing it for sports. If you want to go elsewhere, you go elsewhere. But when you come into a game, you typically want the game.
Just real quick, what you are going to see more and more of, though, and I can speak to our own venue, Ford Field, is we've installed Wi-Fi. We're testing it out. We'll have it active for our next game on the 18th, which is huge. I personally am frustrated whenever I sit in Michigan Stadium and I can't get, and I'm sure you guys all have, it's the number one thing that I think David Brandon needs to do is install Wi-Fi in all of our venues here, because it's frustrating not to be able to get connectivity. So you will be able to do that at Ford Field. But what you'll be able to do, though, is see some things that you can't, and we haven't really talked about in-stadium experience versus at home. But one of the things that we are doing as an organization, as a team, is allowing the fans in the stadium to have a different experience. So what you'll be able to do during a Lions game is on our app, you'll be able to see the 5 camera angles that the referees are able to see when they do the playbacks, which is something you cannot see anywhere else, which is going to be really cool, right? You'll be able to follow your fantasy leagues. You'll be able to see different things that you can't see during a broadcast that we control as an asset in the stadium.
But some of the people out here will say not good enough, because if it's going to be, there's a lot of competition in terms of how incredible the home experience is right now. There are people here who I guarantee, just like they have 10 sheets for the NCAA tournament, have 7 fantasy teams, which I think should be illegal, but whatever. And so I've spoken to, I actually have a piece on this next week on Outside the Lines, people who deny season tickets, turn away from season tickets because they're much more comfortable at home. How do we get to a point where we're not just offering Wi-Fi, but we get to a point where it's actually a better experience to be in the stadium? And how far away are we from that time?
Well, and that's a very lengthy conversation, but to try to keep it boiled down to a nugget is something that we're constantly innovating on. The Lions in particular have not been very good at that. So for 10 years, we've had probably one of the best venues in all of the NFL, and yet we haven't really provided, and it's not just my opinion, it's our leadership's opinion, a really distinct experience. We've given everybody a reason not to be at Ford Field, to be at Eastern Market, or to be somewhere else, even for tailgating, or to be at home. So we're working on that quickly and very intentionally, but it's not just what you're viewing. It's a whole experience from, like Stephen said, the minute you leave your door to the minute you come back home is what we're responsible for. What's the traffic pattern? How long do you stand outside before you come in? We just brought Slows into the stadium. For any of you that have been to Slows Barbecue, it's more or less the Zingermans of Detroit. I mean, people wait in line for 2 hours to get a Slows sandwich on a Thursday at 5. We brought Slows in. They knocked it out of the park. We have people standing in line and coming and buying club seats just to get a Slows in our stadium. So it's the food experience. It's what they're viewing. It's to your point, Darren, it's constantly innovating and making that a premium experience. Otherwise, there is really no reason for them to pay the high prices and to stand in the lines and to park.
It's all about the food. Anyone who follows me on Twitter, it's all about the food.
One other thing on this, a lot of people think that the TV networks are looking to just take it and rather people stay at home than go to the games, and that's not true. There's, of course, far, far, far greater audience on television at home to watch. The TV networks are fine in that regard, and the last thing TV networks want are stadiums that are empty. You're watching something from home, and if you see an empty stadium, innately it's just not as interesting. If people aren't interested to go there, you're not as interested to watch, and the environment's not nearly as compelling.
Scott, let's talk about, we've talked a little bit about the value of sports as live as compared to everything else going on, taped or DVRable. What's the value of long-form journalism in the 140-character era?
Well, it's interesting because, there's this misperception that 18-year-olds can't read anything longer than 200 words. And we found that's exactly the opposite. Gallup recently did a study of reading patterns, breaking down demographics of who reads what. And actually, the one age group that reads more frequently than any other age group in terms of books, magazines, and newspapers is 15 to 18-year-olds. They are the most voracious consumers of media, of written media. And so, again, we talked about how a media company can differentiate itself from the user-created content. 10,000-word stories, immersive experiences, translating, almost creating documentaries on print, has an amazing audience. It's a select audience. You're kind of drawing a circle around kind of your hardcore, most engaged, most sophisticated sports audience. And that audience is incredibly attractive to advertisers. And there's so many ways to kind of play with long-form journalism that we're just now experimenting with. I don't know if any of you guys saw the Doc Ellis story that ESPN.com did about a month ago. It was an amazing interactive experience. It was a 4,000-word story. Doc Ellis, for those who don't know.
About something that has been the legend of Doc Ellis and the no-hitter, something that's been around for so long and being on LSD, et cetera.
Doc Ellis threw a no-hitter when after taking a tab of LSD. It's an amazing story. It's been told many times before, but we kind of reinvented a way to tell this story. It was a 4,000-word story by Patrick Ruby, a really terrific writer. But it also had embedded video. It had timelines. It had talk-throughs. It had audio. It was an incredibly rich media experience that we're now going to try to recreate kind of on a monthly episodic method, and we're going to try to monetize it. And we really think there's audience. The click-throughs on that were unbelievable. It's not just that people clicked on the story, they clicked all the way through it. We have metrics to show how engaged people were with it, how long they stuck with the story. And 50% of the people who clicked on the story read all the way through, which is an unbelievable number that you can monetize. And now that's what we're going to try to figure out. How do you monetize this? How do you not leave money on the table? So it's pretty exciting.
Questions from the audience again. Corner over there.
Question for Mr. Berson. With advancements in the digital age, conferences are seeing a lot of value in the video vaults. How much growth do you see in that? Historically, networks hold on to those rights. Where do you see that going?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear what you said.
Video vaults,
Vaults.
as far as past video and conferences seeing value.
I mentioned before when any network now is acquiring rights, you can't just acquire the rights for television. You need to acquire them, and every network's doing that. But at the same time, conferences are looking to keep their rights. Actually, so we at CBS have a great deal with the SEC. Biggest game pretty much every week in the SEC is on CBS, and during those games now you can watch commercials for the SEC on-demand product. So they have some of that too. The reality is the conferences want to control more of their rights. Mark Silverman, president of the Big Ten Network here, has done an amazing job of setting this model of specific networks. The SEC, it's no surprise, there's tons and tons of rumors that they're going to launch one. Longhorn Network's another experiment. There are lots of these out here where entities want to control their own rights. I think that it is a trend that will continue. NFL Network, MLB Network, NHL Network, a lot of them are there, but none of these properties are there to take away the product that's on the more widely distributed networks. And the NFL is doing the NFL Network. By no means are they looking to supplant the audience from CBS, ESPN, NBC, Fox. It's more additive, and again, it's brand building. And we talked about that before. So I think you'll continue to see niche things, but they're all complementary, not to displace.
It provides deeper engagement. When you think about video, when you think about Twitter, when you think about all those things, we were talking about a stat before.
Just move the mic. I mean, why are you leaning like that?
I wanted to be near Elizabeth. The 12 to any shot he can get, he's going to take at me for sure. Well deserved. 12 to 17-year-old women this last Olympics in 2012, where they had all the social media, they had all the opportunities to consume Olympic content throughout the day, assuming most didn't have jobs, right? They could have had the day to be able to consume stuff live. In prime time, 2012 versus 2008 in prime time, again, all tape delay, 12 to 17-year-old girls, viewership was up 47%, which is an astounding number, 47%. And a lot of that was driven by them being kind of engaged during the day and seeing I don't know how many of you saw the USA Swimming video, Call Me Maybe, that Ryan Lochte and Phelps and a bunch of those, Missy Franklin, a bunch of those did. All that YouTube stuff, it kind of gave all of these folks personality. Obviously, the women's gymnastics team was a great story, too, so people wanted to watch that. But they were able to watch it live and stream it or watch it on another network during the day, but yet they still tuned in prime time in record numbers. So all this stuff that's going on with video and all this stuff that Mark's doing in the Big Ten, it's driving viewership on Saturday or in prime time or whatever the case might be. So it all adds up to deeper levels of engagement, becoming bigger and deep, stronger fan base, and also getting the casual fan in, because viewership really only goes up because the hardcore is always going to watch. It's getting the casual fan to tune in, and now any TV guy could tell you that when the casual fan tunes in, you've had a really good day.
Stephen, the reason why Neilsen exists is that measurement equals value for advertisers, return on investment, rights fees. What keeps you up at night in terms of what you're not able to measure right now effectively?
So the biggest thing is now, and we've talked about this at every panel, you have this screen. Well, not many have a BlackBerry anymore. I'm like a dinosaur. But you have this screen. Darren's got an iPad. Many of you have laptops probably with you or iPads that you're sitting with. So now there's effectively 3-4 screens. So when you are showing a game and you're streaming it across not just TV, we could tell you how many people watched it on TV, but how many people watched it on their phone, how many people watched it on, particularly sports, which is done live, people watched it on an iPad, how many people watched it on their computer, and then give you that total unique number so networks are able to monetize that. That's a huge challenge for us. So,
and you're working on or have something that some sort of piece that could be installed or can be installed into an iPhone or something like that?
We are working on it. It's basically done by panels, and all the TV folks in the room know that. It's done on a panel basis. So with TV, we have a number of households that have something on their TVs, and we've got a device on a bunch of phones, not BlackBerries, unfortunately, but on Android phones and Apple phones or any iPhone. And we're tracking what people are watching, what video they're viewing, and iPads and kind of tablets are the next kind of thing we've got to tackle, because it's really, really important for David when he's showing an event and he's showing it across all these screens and he's got all these places he can show it and all these people are watching it. If he's only able to report the TV number, he's leaving money on the table because he's not fully monetizing those rights. And that's what we need to do to better help David and Mark and all the Fox people in the room. I mean, we need to help you guys do a better job of monetizing the entire bucket of rights.
I think we got about 5 minutes left. Let's get some questions in here.
I have a question for you here.
Okay.
Although it applies to others. In the area of sports content, and you've got a magazine that's come out every 2 weeks, you've got a 24-hour sports network. Is it just my imagination, where is sports content moving away from sports and onto things like information, debate, entertainment? People like Adam Schefter and Chris Mortensen and Jason Lacapora and the PTI guys and so forth. And are the ratings for things like that just as good, and perhaps the cost a lot less, so that in the future you'll have discussion, debate taking over from the sports itself?
Well, I think it hasn't really changed, although there's no debate that the way to make money is to buy a property, buy the highlights, the rights to those highlights, and run it over and over and over and over again. And that does help a margin. Why ESPN's so successful? Disney announced their earnings, and Forbes says ESPN's worth $40 billion. But I do think that the take has to come sooner and louder because of the fragmentation. And I think that you have to develop a personality and give people a reason to come back more than ever before. I don't think that's...
I'll talk about this a little. I've had a fair amount of experience on the programming side dealing with this. There's no doubt that live events are what draws the audience. Hands down, that's what draws the audience. That's what draws the lion's share of advertising, because that's where the audience is. That's what the biggest rights fees. That's what helps drive subscriber fees. That's really what it is. But when there are so many 24-hour outlets now, everyone has to do something. It's less expensive to program with that kind of stuff than with more and more and more rights. Everyone has to do something that's unique and different and try stuff, so it might seem it's getting away from sports, but everyone's just trying stuff, and actually some works, some doesn't. But you know what? You have to try stuff. And there's a question earlier today. I thought Mike Tirico answered incredibly well. Not the part where you referenced me. It was the part that he was talking about, that ESPN takes a lot of chances, and some things work, some don't. I think you have to do that. But the world has changed a lot over the last 10 years or 5 years. It used to be where something like ESPN Classic might be relevant. It's not. ESPN doesn't prioritize that anymore. It's about immediacy. You can get information here instantaneously, and that's what people want. So when you're at home and you're going to tune in something in sports, it's about what just happened or what's happening at this moment. Rarely are you looking to watch something from a while ago. So I think it's a factor of competition, about tonnage, and also about the changing landscape that it is about right now.
More than 99% of ESPN programming is watched live by the consumer. Okay. 2 more questions.
So you talk about the changing landscape. Can you talk about more about internet broadcasting and transition from television into the future, more expansion on the internet?
Yeah, and if I can forward that along, we thought by 2012 that Google and Hulu and Apple would be bidding for rights, and we haven't really seen that yet.
You know, I was on a panel yesterday in New York with a bunch of folks, and someone on that panel I respect a lot, Brian Rolapp, who runs all new media for the NFL. And he was asked a question along these lines, and he was very quick to say that it's not possible to aggregate this many people, as many as on television, and one place online at any one time. Technologically, realistically, it's not a destination. You know, people will go turn on their television. There are certain places. You know that a lot of people at one time are going to tune into CBS or Fox or NBC, whatever it might be. You know that there's a destination people go to. It's so fragmented online that it's really, really difficult to aggregate that number of people at that one time on one site. Is it possible that at some point a Google or a Netflix or somebody will plunk down a boatload of money to get some rights that would have traditionally been on television? It's possible. I don't know if it's anytime soon. I think a lot has to change for one of those places to be a destination that so many people aggregate to at any one time. It'll happen at some point. I'm sure someone's going to take a chance and do something, but it's tough. Television, everyone points to new media. Television's still where most people aggregate.
Final question. Yes.
My question is kind of to go on the career advice, and it's specifically for Darren and Scott. I think for a lot of us that are interested in broadcasting and journalism and sports, like ESPN is the big leagues, is where you want to be. And I think that, at least for me, there's a fear of when I get out of school and get a job in a smaller market, that it'll be hard to branch out. And so I was wondering, what your advice is to not get stuck in the smaller things if your goal in the end is to be somewhere like CBS Sports or ESPN.
My advice is don't be good at everything. Be really good at one thing. Although we're talking about be in all platforms, I think you have to define yourself. For me, I love sports and I love business. I didn't want to toil in markets like Sherman, Texas, where Dave Revson toiled. So basically, what I did was I said, okay, I'm going to start a sports business radio show in college. I'm going to become the ultimate sports business expert, and that's all I'm going to do. And I can be good at this, and this is why ESPN should hire me. So for you, I would say niches are really what allows people to succeed. I would give advice for someone in medical school. Become the hand surgeon that just works on the nerve where people are typing, and be the best one. And all you do is just continue to, undo hands and, put a metal piece in between whatever you call this muscle. So I'd say it's all about niches, and don't be a generalist, because I don't feel like, Chris Mortensen knows football. He doesn't know football and something else. And all the people who succeed and get to where they need to be from a reporter standpoint have defined what they're good at, and they're good at it, and that's why people are willing to pay them what they do.
And by the way, Rohan said the same thing, if you guys remember.
I think the only thing I'd add is I cannot stress how important it is to create and think about right now and create an identity for yourself. If you don't have a Tumblr account, create one and express your identity through that. I mean, it's important, of course, to get the experience, the field experience, and have a tape to show ESPN. We might just be as interested. We might actually hire you because of your Tumblr account, because you're original and interesting, and you have interesting things to say about the world. There's literally 10,000 people for every job at a PA job in Bristol, working, awful hours in no man's land in central Connecticut. The competition is just brutal, and you cannot depend on your tape to differentiate yourself from the competition. You have to create an identity, so embrace every possible platform. Darren does it so expertly. He had an event last night. I'd never heard of this. Actually, Dwight Howard does it at Twitter.
Tweet up.
A tweet up. It was great. I mean, you have to do those things. You have to understand how to take advantage of your brand, create a brand for yourself.
All right. Thank you so much, Scott, David, Stephen, and Elizabeth. I think this